What is going on, guys? ScorpionSlayer66 here, coming at you for my top 25 favorite albums of 2017 list. Now, condensing it down to this top 25 was absolutely hard as fuck, because this year released some of the best albums I've heard from this decade, and even some that I would probably consider some of my favorites for their specific genres, like, of all time. So, I condensed it down to 25 for YouTube because talking about 50 would be absolutely insane and way too long of a video. So on my Instagram by Christmas weekend, I will have my top 50 albums posted. So if you want to look at the full list, go get some more recommendations, head over to my Instagram. I will leave my @ in the description. So yeah, without talking much further, because this video is going to be long as it is already, let's get into my top 25 favorite albums. And again, I said my favorites. These aren't what I think are the best albums of the year by any means. These are just the ones that I personally enjoyed the most and gave the most ear time to. Alright, coming in at number 25 is Brockhampton's Saturation. Now, Brockhampton had an absolutely ridiculous year this year. I will talk about them more as the list goes on. But they released 3 of the most acclaimed albums of the year with one of the most rapidly growing fan bases in the hip-hop scene in a long time, like since Odd Future became a thing. And yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic start to the trilogy. I think they only got better as they went on. But this first one showed a lot of promise. They had a lot of strong pop capabilities, but they also knew how to spit bars and create really wacky beats and use a ton of their members. They're like a 13-member collective. So yeah, amazing start, but it only got better from there. The number 24 spot goes to metalcore legends Converge with their new album The Dusk in Us. I mean, really, Converge is one of the only bands that I can think of that has never put out even a subpar album in their whole career ever since their beginning. And nothing is different here. I mean, it's really heavy, brooding, dark, hard-hitting, punchy metal music, but with yelpy vocals, screechy vocals, punk-like vocals. It's just... yeah, it's more great Converge, and I am still shocked that they're going like 20 years into their career still so strong. Number 23 goes to the band that I think had the best year this year, and it is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with their album Sketches of Brunswick East. Now, you guys will be seeing more King Giz if you know me in person or know me at all outside of YouTube. They're absolutely one of my favorite bands of all time at this point. So yeah, Sketches, really cool collaboration with Mild High Club though. Very jazzy, very smooth, just rich, chocolatey jazz music with a little bit of a garage rock flair. Certain tracks are more jazz heavy, certain ones are more garage heavy, so yeah, it really shouldn't work in concept in my opinion, but I personally have been enjoying the album a lot and I've been listening to it a ton, so yeah, the first of the King Giz on the list. At number 22, we have Southern rapper Big K.R.I.T with his new album, Forever is a Mighty Long Time. Now, I've been a fan of K.R.I.T for years now, ever since I really got into music back in like 2012, 2013. And yeah, I mean, it's just another stellar album in his catalog. It goes everywhere from the most insanely bass-heavy southern trap rap to some of these really kind of sugary, intimate moments where K.R.I.T uses his voice, but instead of trying to reach out of his comfort zone like most rappers would, he really just stays where he knows he's worthy, and that created a really nice dynamic of him knowing his place but doing everything he can to make those moments like just really nice. So yeah, really awesome album. Definitely one of the ones I played in my car the most. I mean, Subitstein is one of the craziest things you could put on your car. At number 21, we have legend as it is, Kendrick Lamar with his new album, Damn. Now, I wasn't as big on this album as most people are. I mean, it has pretty much the highest critical reviews out of all of them, but I just don't think it has that artistic flair that his previous works had. But it's still very excellent, and it really showed that Kendrick is the one running the game right now, because he can hop on beats that his contemporaries would hop on and just still wipe the floor with most of them. So yeah, I mean, it's just Kendrick Lamar doing trap style beats, pop rap stuff. Just yeah, it's a really nice mix of different rap styles, but it just doesn't have that artistic vision that I think his previous ones had. But again, still listened to it a ton, still loved it, and definitely an album I would recommend people listen to if they didn't. Coming in at number 20 is a band you guys have heard me talk about plenty of times in my vinyl update, and it is Godspeed You Black Emperor with their album Luciferian Towers. Now, this seems to be a very divisive record with fans and critics alike. I've seen people say it's their worst album. I've seen people say it's the best thing they've done since Lift Your Skinny Fists. So I'm personally kind of in the middle. I think it's not one of their best albums necessarily, but it's definitely not a terrible album by any means at all. I really enjoyed it. I think that their sound, with them condensing down the lengths that they stretch their drones and their soundscapes, it just makes a really different sound, and I could completely understand if people didn't enjoy it because they like the old stuff. But I don't know, I think they really translate it well to these times that are like about half of what old Godspeed You album lengths would be. So yeah, it's just very droney, doomy type stuff. It's just really pulls at your emotional heartstrings. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. So 19 is an album that actually came out extremely early in the year. In fact, it actually came out Christmas Day of 2016, and it is Run the Jewels 3. This album is the only one that I have from my cutoff date in those first 2 weeks that still made it to the end of the year. They absolutely killed this. I mean, I'm a huge fan of their other work, but I really think 3 had something special. Their instrumentals are a lot more dynamic, and I feel like they meld better now. They always had their cocky moments, they always had their serious moments together on previous albums, but I don't know, just their spark feels more alive than ever on this one. And just insane fucking production done by LP, one of the greatest producers of all time, and Killer Mike just absolutely snapping his ass off on these fucking lyrics, man. It's just insane. They can get political, but they can also have fun. They could be like comic book villains. It's just, these guys are so eccentric, and they're doing something so special right now. And I will continue to support them if they keep making albums this great. So yeah, amazing record, and I can't wait to see where they go from here. Coming in at number 18 is yet another helping of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with their album Murder the Universe. Now, if you guys don't know, King Gizzard is slated to release 5 albums in 2017, but after the second week in December is my cutoff for albums of the year candidates, because I just want to give it ear time and I want to get the album list out before the end of the year. So yeah, but Murder the Universe seems to be one of people's lesser favorites. They did use a lot of spoken word in this album, and it does tend to drag down certain areas. But after listening to some of their early work, I really started to appreciate the spoken word a lot more. And it created like a really nice dynamic and a story that flowed really well. And yes, it does overbear certain sections, but it's not as bad as like I've heard people say it like ruins the record. I mean, it's still really nice. It's still King Giz's heaviest album yet. Like, this shit is bordering on metal like the entire time with how heavy this sound is. So yeah, I mean, it's just King Gizzard having a blast making these insane, fantastical stories with these heavy garage rock instrumentals. It's just absolutely insane, and they continue to blow me away. Coming in at number 17 is Fleet Foxes' Crack Up. Now, I'm absolutely a huge fan of Fleet Foxes, and this record is just yet another incredible piece to add to their work. It's just more of what was going on before, but with Robin Pecknell going back to school and studying music and English and writing more, it was a more sophisticated writing process, and the sound was more illustrious, but I feel like it lost a bit of the raw tension that something like Helplessness Blues had. But it's still absolutely amazing. It's probably my second favorite in their discography at this point. It's just an absolute amazing record, beautiful front to back. I mean, they really experimented on this one with some of the song lengths, and it just really paid off in their favor, and it's definitely one of the albums I've listened to the most this year. My number 16 choice actually was a very late bloomer for me. This album was getting praised literally the second it came out and has continued to get heaps of praise, and I honestly didn't start enjoying it until just a couple weeks back, but it has grown on me so much, and that is Mount Eerie's A Crow Looked at Me. Now, I know it might be blasphemous to say I didn't like A Crow Looked at Me with the unanimous praise this album has gotten, but I don't know, it just wasn't sticking with me. I didn't really care for too much except for some of like the lines that are obviously bone chilling, but recently it's just been impacting me very hard, and it's just an album that I definitely see as something I'll listen to a lot in winter due to the depressing themes of Philip Elvrum's wife passing away and him writing about all of the little things in the process of mourning her death, and it's just an insanely powerful record. but it might take some time to grow on you. So if you don't like it off first listen, give it a break, keep coming back to it, and maybe it'll grow on you as much as it has on me. Coming in at number 15, we have Richard Dawson, Peasant. Now, this is just some insanely freaky folk music, as is the moniker of freak folk this album carries. I'm not super into the genre of freak folk. I enjoy the little bit I've heard of it, but Richard Dawson, for me, has created the best body of work I've heard from this genre personally. Again, I'm no expert by any means at all, so this is just the album that has connected me to the genre the most. And it's just something so strange about how medieval-ish this album sounds. Like, you would imagine thinking of this music in your head while thinking of people back in the Renaissance era just carrying around like lyres and like weird instruments and just playing in the middle of town. So yeah, it's just a very interesting sound. It's very different, and I definitely understand people that don't enjoy the album, but for me it was just something that was kind of like a revelation into a new genre that I would like to explore this year. So yeah, really bizarre album, but if you're into folk music at all, I definitely recommend you listen to it. Coming in at number 14 is one of the only EPs that I had on my list, and this is Death Grip's Steroids, with the parenthesis, Crouching Tiger Hitting Gabber Megamix. Now, this was just a fucking insane thing to hear this year, because I felt like Death Grips had given up on the old, like, ridiculous, raw sound that they had on, like, pretty much just ex-military. But they went back to it with this, but with an extremely insane Gabber-inspired Megamix, or whatever that means, of just all these little bits and pieces of just these crazy electronic glitchy instrumentals and MC Ride screaming his fucking brains out as usual. It was an absolutely insane thing to hear them go back to that raw primal nature of ex-military, but experiment with it more and push it in a completely different direction with what they've learned in the past couple of years of being in the music industry and their sound evolving. So yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a huge fan of Death Grips, so this had to be on the list somewhere. Coming in at number 13, we have the sequel to Brockhampton Saturation, Saturation 2. Now, this pretty much just took all the concepts, the ideas of Saturation 1 and improved upon them, in my personal opinion. They really got a hold of what they wanted to do with their sound, and they experimented a lot more with it. These instrumentals are so dynamic, like, they were just extremely eclectic, interesting, weird, and all of the members shined a lot more on this one. Just more members were highlighted. Now, not all of them were, but a lot of them stuck out a lot more, and especially Kevin Abstract. I mean, he spearheaded this record. Some of his verses were my absolute favorite this year from rap music, and yeah, it was just a really amazing sequel, and again, you might be seeing them one more time on this list. Number 12 is the third course of the King Gizzard meal, and this is Polygondwanaland. Now, I really love what they did with this album. They kind of took it back a notch, and they've had more laid-back, chill records, but this one was more brooding and dark type of chill, as opposed to like a papier-mâché Dream Balloon that was all acoustic. And they really just experimented a lot more with things I'm personally interested in music, especially songs like Searching, where they're fucking with all those polyrhythms. It's just so luscious, and it's so full, and it's just such a captivating sound for me personally, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm getting a special copy of this album pressed for me, so I'm very excited for that. Coming in at the number 11 spot is Courtney Barnett and Kurt Vile's collaboration album, Lotta Lice. Now, this used to be way up higher for my list of albums of the year, but the last like 2 months have been absolutely insane with new music. But this album is just absolutely incredible. It's some of the most interesting folk rock I've heard in a little while, besides like maybe a Fleet Foxes or something like that. And these two just mesh their sound together so well. Like, Courtney has her characteristics of her personality of being kind of just like sarcastic in a way, and Kurt Vile meshes with that perfectly because he always has like this tone of sarcasm in his music, and his interest in psychedelic rock really influenced this folk psychedelic sound that they created together, and I just love their chemistry, and I think it they really need to do more in the future with this. Alright, getting into my top 10 favorite albums of the year. At number 10 we have OC's Orc. Now, OCs are a band that I've always been kind of interested in, and I've always listened to them here and there, but I wasn't really hooked on them until this album. This was just one of the most aggressive, dirty, heavy, psych-influenced garage rock albums I've heard in a long time, and it was just so fast, loud, blaring, rowdy. It was just a really amazing thing to listen to over and over again this year and have it still excite me every single time I heard it, just because of how well done these instrumentals were and these vocals were done and these really just insane lyrics. So yeah, really fantastic album. Definitely one of rock music's highlights this year. Coming in at number 9, we have Ariel Pink's album dedicated to Bobby Jameson. Now, this is probably my favorite thing that I've heard from Ariel Pink. I don't know why, it's just the complete eclectic mix of genres that he chose to mess around on this album with just really made it so interesting to see like what type of mood I was in, what song influenced me that day or put me in a different mood. It was just such a record that I loved going through to see what mood I was in that day, because whatever song I was playing reflected that. And yeah, it's just one of the most gorgeous, glittery almost. It's very like David Bowie inspired, in my opinion, pop records of the year. It's not necessarily pop, it's kind of like post-punky pop music, but it's just really excellent stuff, and yeah, just really blew me away, and I listened to it way too much this year. At number 8 we have electronic musician Iglooghost with Neo Wax Bloom. Now, I've been on the Iglooghost hype train since his last album, but this is definitely my favorite thing he's done so far. It is just the most cutesy, interesting, insane electronic album I've heard in a long time. I'm not like the biggest electronic music fan, but these beats were just so layered, dense, insane, and just still remained like a cute style throughout it all. It was kind of like I was listening to the Pikmin soundtrack, but if it was a lot more insane. And yeah, just fantastic shit. Like I said, I'm not into electronic music like that, but this was definitely one album that I listened to consistently since it came out. Coming in at number 7, we have DeMarco's This Old Dog. Now, this was an extremely interesting moment for Mac, in my opinion. I think it was definitely his most bold album yet. He really experimented with his sound and his song lengths and the subject matters and what instrumentation he was using and even different synthesizers. It was just really interesting to hear Mac push himself so much on a record. I mean, Salad Days, he really pushed himself, in my personal opinion, but this one, it seems like objectively he did the most to try and go out of his comfort zone and still retain his signature Mac DeMarco slacker rock style sound, and it really created an interesting album for me. It came out really early in the year, and I've been listening to it since then. It's really hard for me to listen to an album consistently, like usually at least once a week until like the end of the year, but I obviously love Mac, and he absolutely killed this record. Coming in at number 6, we have the final Brockhampton project, and that is Saturation 3. Now, this is my personal favorite of the trilogy because I feel like this was their boldest step yet, and it's definitely the one that's caught my ear the most. I just think that with them experimenting more, again, like I said about Mac DeMarco, with song length, song structure, using different rappers that barely appeared even on the first 2 records, it just allowed the whole group's dynamic to come together and shine, and it showed how much they've come in just like a 10-month period, or I think it was like an 8-month period or something like that they've released all 3 of these amazing albums. But yeah, this one just hit me the most. I mean, my absolute favorite Brockhampton song, and probably my song of the year, Sister Nation, is on this album. It's one of the most incredible hip-hop albums I've heard in a long time. And yeah, it's just incredible stuff, and I'm very happy to have been on the hype train since before the first one came out. At number 5, we have King Krule with The Ooze. Now, this was an album that was very hard for me to get into at first, but after I kind of understood the direction that he was going with his music and why he was using his vocals the way he was doing, it really clicked with me, and it became my most played album of the year according to my Last FM. So yeah, this album is just wavy as fuck. I mean, if you guys are into music that you can just chill out to, you can just vibe out to, I highly, highly, highly recommend this. And he just created this really interesting sound of like surf punk mixed with like jazz. It's just a really bizarre mix of things, but it came together so well and created an album that has stuck with me a lot, even just since it's been released. Coming in at number 4 is Tyler, the Creator's Flower Boy. Now, this was something I was cautiously optimistic about because I enjoy Tyler, the Creator here and there, but I think he's made some of my least favorite rap projects I've heard this decade personally. Goblin and Cherry Bomb are just not that good, but he really outdid himself on this one. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Wolf, and that record means a lot to me, but this kind of blows Wolf out of the water in a way. Tyler just got more introspective. He was more willing to be mature and talk about his feelings, and, you know, obviously the big news, and even though this doesn't matter, about this album was that Tyler, the Creator, came out of the closet on this album, and that was a huge thing for Tyler to do because he's always been seen as this immature, like, fuck up in the music industry, but for him to just confidently push himself to say something like that and make an album around that about his feelings of loneliness and how he has to buy things to make himself feel better. It was just a really beautiful moment in rap this decade, and it's definitely one of the albums that stuck out to me the most from his catalog. At number 3 is Idol's Brutalism. Now, this is one of the most exciting debuts I've heard from a new band, I think, this decade. These guys have a really hardcore post-punk sound. It's very heavy punk music, but it has a lot of post-punk into it, and their political stances, the way they present their lyrics, how aggressively they play everything, their frontman being one of the wildest I've heard in a long time. This was just so exciting, and I could not stop listening to this, and I'm absolutely chomping at the bit to hear what they have next, and I hope and pray to God himself that Idols does a US tour, because I will go to every show I possibly can. Alright, coming in at number 2 is my favorite rap album of the year, Open Mike Eagle with Brick Body Kids' Still Daydream. Now this, I keep using these words and I apologize, but it really just describes my personal preference with hip-hop in its current state, but I just love how eclectic and weird and dynamic these instrumentals are. I mean, he took so much influence from like Middle Eastern culture, and it just creates this really strange, like, new sound that I haven't heard too terribly much in hip-hop ever. And Open Mike just spitting some of the most witty, multi-layered bars currently, and he's just like creates this amazing sound that you just have to listen to so much because you have to dissect his lyrics because they're so layered. You have to dissect the instrumentals because they're so layered. It's just, there's so much to go off of with this album. Every time you listen to it, you hear something new. You pick up on a line you didn't understand before or a reference, and it's just created an album that I have been obsessively listening to since it came out, and I'm really sad that I missed the vinyl pre-order, but I'll probably chomp the bullet and buy a copy of it very, very soon. Alright, so my favorite album of the year, if you guys know me, this is definitely no surprise. This is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard with Flying Microtonal Banana. Now, I've been listening to this album at least once or twice a week since February, and it hasn't stopped since. And this was the album that started my obsession with King Giz a lot more than I already had. So this album, I just don't know what I can say about it. There's so much I can say, but I really want to try and keep this short. Experimenting with microtonal tuning was genius. Going to those Middle Eastern scales really fit King Gizzard's sound and their microtonal instruments. It just created a very wild, kind of like deserty, outer spacey sound, and it was just an absolute watershed moment for me personally. I know not a lot of people are liking this album as much as I am, but just for me, this has quickly become one of my favorite albums of all time. It's already one of my most played of all time. So it's just, yeah, this album is absolutely incredible, and I can't really do it justice. Just please go listen to it. Alright guys, so that was my top 25 favorite albums of 2017. Let me know down in the comments below what were some of your favorite albums, what were some that I left off my list. Let me know, and while you're in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe, and until next time guys, take care.